Welcome to day 3 of JNUC. Thank you for making it here. I know it's it's the early morning session on Thursday, and the fact that this room is this full is actually pretty cool. I've presented on Thursday, and I never have a crowd like this, and now I know it's entirely my fault and nothing to do with JNUC party the night before. So anyways, I'm Eric Johnson. I'm a client engineer for Jamf. I just wanted to introduce John Malman here, who's from the University of the Arts, and he'll be talking about leveraging DEPNotify, or DEPNotify to some, and Jamf Pro for device deployment.
Awesome.
Let you have it.
All right, good morning, everyone. I'm really happy to see so many people made it out here, especially after the JNUC party. Show of hands, how many people are hungover right now? No? Oh, okay, just joking. So just a little about me. I'm a network systems administrator for the University of the Arts in Philadelphia. I've been there since December 2015. I've got over 10 years of Mac experience. All of it is basically education. You'll see that I write somewhat bad code, really bad code, ugly code, but it works. I brew some good beer, which unfortunately I don't have for you today, and I play tabletop games in my spare time. Oh, yeah, thank you. My username on Slack, Git, and Jamf Nation is jmalman if anybody wants to ever reach out to me. And I have my website there, yearthegeek.net, which is where you'll find a lot of information regarding this process and a lot of other processes that I use. So there is, since we all like acronyms, that's the acronym of my presentation right there. It is unpronounceable, so there you go. Basic rundown of what I'm going to go over today, though, is the past, the present, and the future. So basically where we started, how I got here, and where we want to go. As I mentioned, I work for University of the Arts in Philadelphia. UArts at Atlanta, so some stats about UArts. We have about 1,800 students, give or take, spread across 6 buildings in downtown Philadelphia. We are a majority Mac campus with only a handful of Windows machines. So right now we have about 200 student-facing public machines. Student-facing meaning labs, studios, smart classrooms, things like that. We do manage offices, faculty and staff machines, which are also Macs, and BYO student devices, and basically 97% Macs, so we're managing a lot of machines. So here's where I'm going to hear people cringing. We have computers aged from 2009 to 2018, on-prem Jamf since 2012. That last one, actually, I'm missing a bullet in there. We also have macOS 10.10 and higher going in there. This is education. I'm sure some of you are there. It's really hard to get out there and upgrade all your machines. But we are, as of this year, replacing anything older than 2012, and we're upgrading every machine. So that's a good thing. Thanks for that. We have a little over 1,700 managed systems in the Jamf server at any time. We actually just hit a milestone, and we hit 2,000 last week. So let's go back just a few weeks where we all started. And I'm saying weeks because I know if you're like us, you're still doing imaging every so often, right? So this is what the process looked like. You would send a command out like this, or something like that. All right. Oh, went a little quick there. I'm not used to the button here. Thank you. Okay. You would send out a command like this using ARD or a policy in Jamf. It would get hit by your server, and then Jamf imaging would take over. All right. You would walk in the next day or whenever, and your machines would just be imaged, and it was great. All right, you would set it, forget it, and then go get a drink. I particularly like dark beers. And then it happened. And I think everybody knows what I'm talking about. Yeah. Apple gave us this update. I'm sure everybody in this room has seen this knowledge base article, all right? But let's be real. Just because Apple doesn't recommend it doesn't mean it's not going to work. Or so we thought. Right? Ukulele, user-approved kernel extension loading. So we're like, okay, this stinks. And Apple at the time didn't give us any way to really manage this well. And then we had UAMDM. So UAMDM was great because we can manage UAKEL, But we couldn't automate this. There were some workarounds with grandfathering in your computers and upgrading and things like that, but again, it was kind of dodgy. So Apple was like, oh, that's okay, we'll take away your ability anyway. TToo Chip came, and guess what? Full security is enabled by default. So this has basically killed automated imaging, except for a few edge cases, but this basically killed it. So the question that was asked, and has been asked for a while now, and everybody knows the answer now. We're going to Google it, though, just to check. So we're going to click on some links. Everybody knows scripting OS X, Armin. All right. Imaging is dead. Long live the installer. All right, well, what about Jamf Nation? Well, that's a post from recently, deploying with Casper Imaging. That's something that we've done for years. How to image with OK. So basically, we saw people learning how to image all over again. So yeah, it's dead, Jim. Mostly. Because we do know it still works for old machines, right? But we know it's not going to last for long. So, last year. What are we going to do? This is what I just go to my colleague. I'm like, what are we going to do? This is going to be bad. Well, forgive the wall of text. There's going to be a bunch up here. You don't have to read it all. I'm going to go over some of it. Our first option was to stay on 10.12. Great idea for some things. Workflows work fine. Software worked fine. But security updates are going to stop, right? And then we started getting new machines, and they had 10.13. Same thing happened with 10.14. And Apple was already releasing software, I'm looking at Final Cut right now, that worked only with 10.13. So we were like, all right, this isn't going to work. Option 2, InPlace Upgrade. Cool. It's very quick. 45-minute process. We didn't have to image anymore. Loved it. But we did have a lot of leftover bits from software after upgrading Adobe and other products. So we were like, and it was a lot more manual work. We had to sit there and babysit things. We had to set up auto logins because 10.13, for some reason, you had to log in to finish the update process. Option 3, InPlace Upgrade and image it in the future. This was the option we were going to go with because it actually it worked pretty well. We installed the firmware at the upgrade, which is the reason why you couldn't image anyway. The workflows already worked fine, but we did have some leftovers and more work if we just didn't upgrade. But the other big issue are those two at the bottom, the UAMDM and Ukulele would not work. And I'm still calling it Ukulele, I don't care. So we wouldn't be able to get AV sound drivers because we have a lot of music equipment that needs drivers still. Wacom tablets just wouldn't work. So this was not a solution. So we had to come up with something. So a couple months into 2017 and then 2018, I go, OK, now what are we really going to do? So let's look at the tools we have. We've got Apple School Manager, which is just device enrollment for schools. And we have Jamf Pro, which works with device enrollment. So, OK, well, let's put them together and make a simple, nice user experience, right? There's already apps for that. Cool, let's take a look at 2 of them. Splash Buddy, which was, I'm sure a lot of people know Splash Buddy. And then the one that we called the new kid, DEPNotify. DEPNotify, I'm saying DEPNotify. I got it from the mule's mouth, or excuse me, not the mule, the Mac troll's mouth itself. It's DEPNotify. So Splash Buddy was very enticing. Really good UI, lots of functionality, and it allowed user input, which was really important to us. That last one is really important. But it did have a lot more setup required. You had to rename policies and packages. You have to set up XML files. You have to build packages up a certain way. It was a little more than we really wanted to have to go into. DEPNotify, nicely customizable UI, very clean, very simple setup. It just reads a log file. But this one at the bottom was really big. No user input. So we were like, all right, well, we're going to use Splash Buddy. We're going to spend all the time to use Splash Buddy and do this. Well, Federico Deese, sorry I misspelled your name there, user FGD on Slack, came into the DEPNotify channel and was like, hey, I've got this build that takes user input. Anybody want to test? Oh, and also shows, a EULA. Cool. So let's test it. Downloaded it, tested it. Boom. It was beautiful. It worked well. So we took that away. We had user input, and we had our choice. So everybody here probably knows what DEPNotify is, but for those who might not, or who just might be watching this video later, just a quick and dirty rundown how it works. Reads an input echoed into a log file, which you set. That input sets up the UI and controls the flow of the application itself. All aspects of that UI, so the image, the text, the progress bar, even if it's full screen or not, they're all controlled by this log. And you can see right here, it's literally just saying echo command, and then you give the command, main title, image, window style, and it just goes right into the DEPNotify log, which I just called DN log here. So. And it was really nice. It was very simple. Excuse my crude graphics. I'm not good at using Keynote. This was our process. We get the new machines in, prep them with the base OS with either DEP for a new machine or internet recovery for a used one, or a reused one, excuse me. We boot the machines to setup and install the software. And then when the machine was getting ready to go out, we would assign it and rename it, enter the asset tag and information. So we'll take a look at the first one right there. So our new machines would get assigned in our server via Apple School Manager. Pretty simple. Make sure the pre-stage is configured and then assign the machine to the correct pre-stage setup. Now, at the time, we had 2 pre-stages, but right now it's just 1, so I'll go more into that in a bit. So note here, and I'm going to hear people groaning, require authentication is unchecked. This is unauthenticated DEP, or deployment. We did this because we want our techs to actually do this work. We don't give laptops to faculty and staff and just have them do it. They don't like it. They're very peculiar. So if you require authentication, obviously it's going to be assigned to that user. So we just skip over that entirely. For a new machine, or continuing, I'm sorry, next up we create our local admin account, which is called Mac admin. It's just on every computer. Note again, go back again. Forgive me. Note again that the skip account creation for local account is unchecked because we don't want to do that until after we're ready, until after we assign that machine. So now for machines that are already in the Jamf server, this is pretty simple for prepping. We can utilize the start OS install binary from the installer, and you push it out. You push out the installer, hit it with a script that will take care of the process, and we'll start the install. So this is just our little one-line script. Note that I did add a $4 in there for additional flags, like erase install if you have the capability to do that, or convert to APFS, again, if you have the capability to do that. It is really nice, though, because if you have APFS machines, you can make this a policy to just wipe the machine clean and then re-provision it. For machines that aren't in the Jamf server or that are not in DEP for that matter, or you can't use the erase install command, we have good old internet recovery here. So you do Command R. I'm sure everybody knows this, gone through this before. So going back to our steps, we just prep the machine. Now I want to deploy it. So deployment, simply booting the machine to get the mobile config and install the software we need on the base machine type. So every machine gets a certain base installation. But what if you don't know who's getting that machine or where it's going? How are you going to figure out what software actually gets installed after? That doesn't happen until the next step. So I thought, OK, well, let's combine them. I'm trying to combine them, but the button's not working. There we go. All right. So after we prepare that machine can either go into storage and sit on a shelf, which actually happens a lot for us. We'd send out an email to a staff member, say, hey, your new machine's here. Come and get it. Oh, great. 3 months, it sits there on a shelf. So we didn't want to have to prep a machine and then when we give it to them, update it again. So this is great because we could prepare it and then just hold it on a shelf. It also sort of is a lower amount of steps. I know there's 6 things up there on the screen, but it's 2 steps. Trust me. This was our Enrollment Complete process. Again, sorry for the wall of text. We'll install DEPNotify with extra payload items and then run a script. And that script is going to do the things that we want to do, right? And it sounds really great, doesn't it? Well, it wasn't at the time. We ran into a lot of issues. So the first issue was that it ran behind the login window. So things would work. It would load. It would start downloading things, but it wouldn't show the user anything. Obviously, that was bad. So I added a wait for the doc loop. And I'm sure some people in here know that that also doesn't work all the time. So it ran before the user was completely logged in. So we'd have the tech log in, and it would just not load. So I added a timer. Cheap method of doing it, right? Again, I'm bad at scripting, guys. I mentioned that in the beginning, right? So I added a timer, and again, that still didn't work. because timers never work. So it wasn't running every time. So what I did was I said, you know what? Let's do a LaunchDaemon. We could time it exactly when to run. So updated process right there is our LaunchDaemon and deployment script. So it's basically the same thing except that. So we made our package. There's our package. That's DEPNotify. That's in var temp. We have our logo and our provisioning script. Love my naming, right? Really long name. And that gets called by our LaunchDaemon right there. So this is our LaunchDaemon. It's pretty straightforward. That line there loads the provisioning script right after login is complete, or just when the load command runs. It runs with, and this is great because this runs even if the enrollment trigger happens after login, which happens quite often on our setup. We have some timing issues with our server for some reason. So we load it with that PostInstall script right there. That's where it gets loaded, which is this. Ignore everything except that. That's the big one right there. Load LaunchDaemon. So now the package is done. We're going to create our policy. Trigger is complete. There's our policy right there. Enrollment complete is the trigger, excuse me. This is what our package looks like. You can see how old this screenshot is because it says DEPNotify RC2. So once DEPNotify is installed, the only thing left to do is the things. We're going to have the LaunchDaemon run the script and do everything right there. So we're going to actually see it in action. Not live, because I'm not crazy. Not at all. These are all screenshots. So anyway, after we boot, everybody knows this process. We unfortunately have to go to Setup Assistant. And I think I speak for everybody in this room. Apple, please give us a way to skip this. This is the only thing holding us back from zero-touch deployment. I hear some thing. So anyway, I'm actually going to go through the steps now. 1, 2, 3. All right. We know we have a DEP machine. It's assigned to a server, so we're ready to roll. 4. We're going to wait. Another one. And in our time zone, which this one you could technically skip because this one can get set by a script. But the problem is you want to log in, obviously, and you want the time to be correct, so you're going to have to go through this. And we're brought into our login window. Notice that our Mac admin account is there, and it didn't ask for any authentication, so we're going to log in. And we're greeted with this. Now, I'm doing this on High Sierra because, well, that's what we're using right now as our final OS. We did not move to Mojave because half of our software doesn't work with it yet. Education's great. So this happens. This will happen even after the enrollment trigger runs at login. So the DEPNotify window comes up. And now I'm going to show it side by side. And again, sorry for the wall of text, but you'll see it's pretty simple. All these slides will be available by Jamf, and they will also be on my website. And I'll probably put them on my Git. All the scripting that's here is on my Git. All right. Yeah. Look at all that code. So DEPNotify was launched right here. We waited for the doc. We waited for the finder. And we made sure that we're not in the MB setup user account, because that's that MacBuddy setup account. We're also looking for this file that I labeled in here, the setup done file. That's a receipt that tells when our system finished this. I'll get more on that later. It's literally just a BOM file. The window looks the way it does because we sent these commands here to the DEPNotify log file, and then we launch DEPNotify. So you send these commands before you launch DEPNotify because it's reading from that file to how to set it up. Notice that we're assigning, we have that click to assign, we have the icon, just waiting for you, and the assign button is named. And down here, this is the interesting thing. This is going to wait until our tech hits that assign button, because I literally have a file in there that says it's a do loop that is just waiting for a plist to get dropped after user registration. Now we do this because we want our techs to be able to walk away after they hit a button. The problem is if you're doing user input, at the end, if they walk away and it's sitting there waiting, they have to come back, or they might forget about it, which we've had happen before, so that's why I switched everything around. So that gets dropped down. So they click assign, and this drops down the user registration window here. All right. That's populated by this section of code here. Now this is just writing to a preferences file. It's a defaults write command. We only needed 2 fields for this, but you can do a drop down. You can do, I think, up 2 fields, 2 dropdowns, and a sensitive data checkbox. So that's all run, again, before DEPNotify launches. All right, so after user input done, we can begin all the tasks. Note that everything's changed now. It says preparing the system for deployment. The progress bar went up. It says installing base software. The button's gone. That's always nice, right? So first, we're grabbing the username, and we're grabbing all that information that we got the username, and we're holding it for account creation later, right? Then we're passing more commands into the log. After the policy is run, we create a local account based on the one that we assigned it to and setting the password to that local account name. And again, I don't want to hear any groaning from security people. It's only temporary. Okay. And then we also run our first run here. So after that's done, we're going to actually run this policy called Enroll Assign Device. Excuse me. This policy runs a script that assigns that device to that user using the API. All it's doing is it's reading a plist that was dropped, sets some variables for the user, an asset tag, and then sets up an XML file and passes it to the JSS URL. So, Jamf URL. If anybody's done any work in the Jamf API, this is really kind of simple, understandable, right? We also rename the machine to the username hyphen prefix, so MBA or MBP. Most of the time it's MBP now. And then we also update some extension attributes that we have. So these are just receipts that are hidden on the computer that we're going to get read later into the Jamf system. So we know what the computer name was, what the asset tag name, all different stuff. So if the user does change anything, it still remains in that file. So we're back in our provisioning script at the bottom. We're going to run a recon because we can get all that delicious new data in there. Note that we also updated the progress bar, and it says updating inventory. So again, this is all read into the log file. We're going to run software updates, change our text to DEPNotify to let them know, hey, look, it's almost done. This has probably been going on for like a half an hour. And then after the updates are done, we're sending a command to restart the computer immediately. Now, this is great because we do cleanup right afterward, but you can have this quit. You can have it just log out. You can ask the user to acknowledge that it's done and hit OK before it reboots. So there's a couple different options you have here. And right as that happens, we clean up everything. We're removing the app. We're removing the scripts. And then here, we're dropping that provisioning file, that BOM file. This is basically something that we're going to read later in the receipts to find out, did this go through enrollment? It also will stop this from running again. So right there, you'll also see that we're removing the LaunchDaemon instead of unloading it. If you unload it, the script dies. So we just delete it because it's already loaded. So there's no point to unload it because we're restarting the computer. And then at the bottom, it's a self-destructing script. It deletes itself after it's done. Computer reboots, and there we go. There's my new user account. Yay. It's really simple, right? But I was really happy this worked. I was so happy. This took me weeks to get. So I began to think, oh, there's one more slide. There we go. Can I automate it? So around the exact same time I was working on this, Neil Martin did a Jamf Nation roadshow, and he did something very similar to what we were doing, what I wanted to do, I should say. So I, wanted to try it for myself. So I said, yeah, I could do this with scripting. I could do anything if I know how to script it. So thank you again, Neil. There's Neil's presentation link for those who don't have it. It will be at the resources at the end also. So this is my wonderful flowcharts. I really like flowcharts. I'm really bad at making them. So yeah, it's great, isn't it? I wanted the machine to auto-log in so DEPNotify would actually open, because DEPNotify needs to open in a user environment. So then we need to see, okay, do we know this machine? Is this a known machine to the server? And what kind was it? Was it an office? Was it a lab? Was it a public machine? So if it wasn't known, or if it was an office or a checkout machine, it would always ask for user input, no matter what, because we know that that machine's either getting reassigned or something else. If it's a public machine and it's known, we just want it to do things. So where it says find machine type, how we got that is our extension attribute. That's those receipts at the end. We have two extension attributes. They're text extension attributes. One of them is the computer name, and one of them is the cohort, or the machine type. So there's our package, our automated package. It looks very familiar, right? But the only difference is the PostInstall Script has some changes. So it's mainly the same, except for this zoomed-in section here. We're still loading the LaunchDaemon, obviously, right? But this portion down below is a little, it's ugly right on the screen, but it works. So while we're in the MB setup user, that MacBuddy setup user, what we're doing is we don't want DEPNotify to run because this line here, as you see, it says policy dep auto login. That's a policy that installs a package that makes a automatically logging in user and then restarts the computer, so then when the computer turns on, it logs in and DEPNotify goes on. So there's our automated user package. It's literally just a PKG that reboots. This one was made with Mac User Generator. The Mac User Generator doesn't work with Mojave. Any packages made from there. So now I've used Pi create user package. So this is actually built off of Pi, create user package. So it's all relatively the same. So again, let's see it in action. So I'm not going to bore you with all the other text or all the other clicks because you've probably seen it a million times. But we know that we have a computer in DEP and it's assigned. Goes in. Now we're back at the login screen. So before we would log in. So instead we're just waiting. Computer's going to reboot automatically, and then our provisioning script, this thing, top part of it, kicks in. So first we want to see if we recognize the machine, so let's zoom in. All right, this is the fun part. So we're going to pull the info from the Jamf server in this script. We're going to get our extension attributes, which are called new computer name and new cohort. Now the naming, don't worry about the naming. We have old extension attributes named computer name and cohort. We just didn't want to remove it because it's scoped to so many things. But this is literally just pulling the text value from those to see, are they, to hold them in some variables, and then we're going to use them later and say, okay, let's check some things against it. Side by side again. So we're going to get that info from that section we just saw. Right here, we're checking to see if any of those extension attributes are blank or if it's an office machine. So it's basically saying, okay, let me read that computer type. Is it an office? Okay, is the name blank? Okay. And then it does anything. So if it is, in this case, this is an office machine, so it's actually waiting for user input. It's waiting for somebody to click that begin button. They click begin. Again, they're going to get the user registration window, again, which was set up with all that information. Now we have a drop-down now for our computer type. Fill that information in, sends it off to the API. It just reads it and sends it off to with the API again, just like every other machine. So if it is a public machine, it's just going to skip in and go right into this. It's not going to ask for user input at all. Okay? I hear some claps out there. All right. So right here, if it falls into one of those groups that we specified that's not an office, basically, it's just going to set up DEPNotify and launch it. We don't need to wait for user input. And then everything merges at the bottom because everything else runs the same thing. We're just running, I'll zoom in a little bit there. We're just running 2 policies on each of these. That's all it is, if the machine meets any of these criteria. So 2 policies are, 1, install software, easy enough, which is another script that just has a bunch of triggers in it. And what's nice about that is you can edit that in the Jamf web app. Instead of having to build a package or uploading scripts, you just go right into Jamf web app and add a new line of software update in there. And the other one is just our scripts that we run, are all different provisioning scripts. The end of our automation script is the same as the other one, right? Except this line right here. RM, RF, etc, KC password. This is just so the user doesn't log in again. That's really all it does. It takes away the password file, the auto login password file. We reboot, and we're greeted by our login window. And that would be it. That's how we got it. And we were like, oh, this is great. So some of you might be asking that. Why are there 2 processes? There's a really good, it's a good question because I just showed you 2 processes, so you think there's 2. There really aren't now. There's 1, and it's the final one. So the first process, it was the original proof of concept. We were using that for testing for months before the automated one was done. I wanted to make sure that it worked. I wanted to make sure that our techs saw this. We also weren't getting any public machines in until the summer education, right? So I didn't care about automation. Plus, any machines that we did get to replace machines were one-offs. We weren't doing this en masse. We were getting some faculty and staff computers trickling in. So it was a great time to test. We're like, all right, we're getting new machines, one here, one here. Why don't we test it? So I made the first one. When I needed to automate it, I went and automated. So now we merged everything into one. We have one, all the updated information is on a Git page, on my Git page in a repo. So you can see it all there. You can even see all the install software scripts. So this was totally me after I got it working, right? When you get an automated provisioning setup, you're like, oh my God, this is imaging, but guess what? It's not. All right, and that's okay, right? The good thing is that because DEPNotify was so easy to handle for us, I have a pretty big workload. It's 2 people managing 2,000 machines, but when you have, staff that pass off information to you, or pass off other tasks to you, it can get a little daunting. So I wanted something simple. DEPNotify really helped me with that. And it made our transition smoother. Even though we went way later than we should have to DEP, it still worked well. So hopefully, though, we get to that hands-off effect, right? So welcome to the future. DEP, excuse me. So now this might be some people here also saying, oh, I'm not into scripting. Do you have any ideas? Well, yeah. Jamf Professional Services actually has a script, has a repo for DEPNotify. And it includes a really nice script. Look how clean it is compared to mine. You just fill in some information in there, and it's really simple, really easy to use. The author is sitting in this room somewhere, in the back, I think. Yeah, back there, I see him. So looking ahead, right? So macOS has been giving us new tools with every version, right? So let's hope that we can get to a 100% zero touch, right? The erase install flag is a great tool. It's awesome. We can do it remotely. But if you don't have APFS machines, SSDs, it doesn't work, right? In 10.14 it does, but if you're not on 10.14, it doesn't work. So can we skip Setup Assistant? That's the biggest hurdle. We need to be able to skip it. And since APFS does give us snapshots, can we get better use of them? Because right now, what are they used for? Oh, there's an update. OK, we're going to take a snapshot. OK, it's gone. So the other one, DEPNotify at login window. This would be really useful, right? There's work being done on it. Joel has said it, showed it. And it also, I believe it's a little merged with NoMAD login. There's some differences in feature set, mainly because of the user environment that it runs in at login window. You can probably track down Joel or anyone from his team to ask that, not me. And let's see what Jamf comes up with, right? There is some work being done on it. It is, I believe. It's a feature request, so it must be public that they are looking at doing something. They've had WebExes. They've had people in on them. I've been in on several of them, seen some of the stuff that it's really nice. Don't know how long it's going to be, but now that they have Joel, who worked with DEPNotify and who has NoMAD, maybe it'll go quicker, right? So this is a list of resources for everybody. If they really just want to take a quick shot, yeah, I'm going to wait for everybody to grab their phones out. And again, all of this info is on my Git. Those two, I believe, yeah, those 2 links are completely updated. I am in Slack every day, all day, because I have no life. I'm kidding, I have a life. It's just boring. And I will be around all, here. I'm going to be leaving tomorrow, so if anybody wants to just come grab me, feel free to grab me. I'm very easy to talk to, especially with alcohol. Thank you again, guys. Oh, I will take some questions. There's obviously 10 minutes left, so if anybody has any questions or concerns about it.
Yeah.
There's a mic here, and there's a mic somewhere else, I think.
Yeah, John's been kind enough to consent to questioning. So yeah, we have our single microphone right here, so if we just want to pull up. You guys are competing right now, but somebody will arrive first.
First in, first out, right?
You mentioned you had, at one point in time, you had 2 pre-stage enrollments,
Yes.
and then you had to go to 1.
Yes.
I could never get a second one to work.
Okay.
What challenges did you have with that, or what things did you notice that it was easier just to have 1?
So ours just worked. I mean, we have in our pre-stage enrollment page, we have like 4 of them. Okay, at the time, we had one for faculty, we had one for public, we had a test one, and then we just had one for me that I just messed around with.
That's kind of what I was trying to do, was set one up for each like different department.
Yeah. If you are doing multiple pre-stages and you're trying to do this, multiple pre-stages is a headache. All right, because whenever a computer comes in, if it's not you managing them, right, you're going to have to physically go in and touch every single checkbox to put it in there. So it's not the best idea.
Okay.
This is why we went up with one session. But if your multiple pre-stages doesn't work, like if you have different pre-stages and it's not working, that might be something you have to talk with Jamf about, because it seems to work fine for us whenever we had it. It's just not, it's not a really good idea to do it. And we were going to do that. We were going to have faculty and public.
Yeah.
It was a nightmare because we would have machines, people trying to image them and or deploy them, nothing would show up because they're not assigned.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, well, seeing your presentation is going to help a lot. Just finding the time to be able to do it.
Yeah, it's hard to find the time, so.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yep.
So you had mentioned that you had devices that span, 2009 to current, and we know a lot of those devices are not DEP enabled.
Yes.
You know, they're
we know
they're
that.
pre-DEP.
Yep.
How does your workflow fit into that non-DEP workflow?
So for machines that aren't in DEP, we still image, because most of them aren't going to run to 1013 anyway. 1013 imaging does work. What we do is we image to 1012 and then upgrade it. So if you need to do that, that's what we do. In the long run, what we're hoping to do, so DEPNotify is great because you can use it for so many other things because it's just reading from a log file. We're using this to actually push out large policies. So if we have logic getting installed, we just launch DEP, cover the window, and show logic is installing, and then it shows a progress bar. You could technically do the same thing with a computer that is not in DEP. You bring it in, you wipe it, you manually enroll it. Unfortunately, it's manually, right? But you manually enroll it, and then when the enrollment trigger kicks in, DEP can come up. DEPNotify can come up, and it'll just take care of everything for you. It'll run the same exact process.
Cool, thanks.
Yep. Hi.
Hey, I was going to ask basically the same question. We're a school district, and we have the same thing you guys have. We have stuff still on El Capitan.
Yeah.
So, and we're using imaging, and we've been using it for High Sierra.
Right.
With, mostly success with Casper. But how long of a process did it take you guys to migrate over from this, from
imaging to DEP?
Yeah.
It took me as long as it took to write the script, honestly. We weren't going to be ready for this when the cutover came over. When we were getting new machines in that were not going to image, right? We were getting TToo machines in, and we're like, oh no, we're going to have to do this manually. So it took me about 4 months from start to finish to basically figure out what I wanted to do the proof of concept, and then do the automated one. So it took me about 4 months of trial and error to get it, with a lot of help from Slack. Definitely the Slack people the Macadmin Slack helped me so much with this that I can't thank them enough. So.
Because when we do like internet recovery on some of them, they come up mountain lion.
Right. Yeah, and that's the other issue is that you have machines that when their internet recovery goes off, it just doesn't give you what you want. And unfortunately, there's no way around it, right? Technically, you can do it with a USB stick when the machine's that old. Mm-hmm. But honestly, the best way to do it is to just kind of like just upgrade it to the latest it'll go manually, because it'll update the recovery partition and everything, so you can do it that way.
Because we have Lifecycle Management for PCs through Dell.
Yeah.
But Macs, they never thought about that part.
Yeah. It's a tough place to be in when you have old hardware and old software, right? My best advice is to replace the older machines as fast as you can. I mean, I know it's really tough when you're on budgets with education, but it's something that when you bring it up to, say, your VP of finance or your CTO or something, you say, like, would you rather that, or would you rather me hire more staff? Because this is what it's going to take to help.
All right. Thank you.
Yep. Hi.
Hi. First of all, thanks. That was a great session. I think you've made our mind up about which
I don't want to sway
notification
anybody away from
screen
Splash
to
Buddy.
use.
Splash Buddy is phenomenal. Okay, it's really nice.
Yeah,
It was just
yeah.
more than what we needed. That's all.
Yeah, and the IBM one the other day looks good too. But
Yeah.
The missing link for us was the user input, so that's cool. Just on that, you need to get an API user on the machine in the script, I guess, in order to push the...
No, it's just an API call. It just reads from the Jamf API. Oh, you mean as in put
so you
a
need to
username
put
and
in an
password
API user and then...
So the way we did is
You hard code it in the script?
all the security people cover your ears. I hard code a username and password in my provisioning script.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. But it is a self-destructing script, so it goes away right away, and it's hard to find. Our users aren't that adept at finding stuff like that.
I guess the question is, what are the minimum permissions it needs?
What's that?
What's the minimum permissions it needs to, what's it writing?
I think it just needs read and write to computers, like to create computers and update extension attributes.
Okay.
I don't know offhand, unfortunately.
So I would
sometimes it's trial and error.
You'd read and update.
Yeah, read and update.
To computers.
Just the computer
just the
object.
computer side.
Yeah.
We shouldn't need extension attributes in that because that would be actually creating the extension attributes rather than
Right.
updating the
There you go.
values.
Yep, there you go.
Thanks.
Any more? Awesome. Thank you, everybody, for showing and making it to 9 a.m.